Hey guys, welcome back to Grower Solution. You caught us here in the middle of another installation. We're putting up another demo house here on the property. This one here is going to be a 32-foot wide Super Duty house. Now, if you have particular questions about your greenhouse build that I don't get covered in this video, feel free to reach out to us here at Grower Solutions. So one of the first things I'm just going to start off with is starting with the foundations of your house. The number one thing we want to do is make sure that we've got a decent area to start with. Now, you don't have to be perfectly level. None of our houses here are on perfectly level ground, but you want something that is manageable. So what we're dealing with here is about an 8-inch drop across 32 feet. And we've found a way to make that work by building our house with the lay of the land. So for some of this, we've had to throw our levels out, and that's just something to keep in mind. You're not always gonna be able to build on dead level. The first thing we wanna do though, is make sure that we have our first 4 corners of our greenhouse put into the foundation calculator. Then you can figure out exactly what your diagonal measurement needs to be from your front right corner here to the back left corner. And so what we'll do is you wanna start, we pulled 32 feet outside to outside on our ground stakes here. And in doing that, we've set where our house was gonna begin. Then we pulled our diagonal measurement off of the front corner to the back corner over there, opposite side. Don't get caught up so much in your measurements that you're gonna end up delaying your project or spending more time on this than is what really is required. Your house is gonna be just fine, and it's gonna look great too when you're done. Another thing that we do when we're doing these installations, once we do have our 4 corners in and set, what we really like to do is take 2 strings, especially on these low and high sidewall kits, and we like to tie a string on the top side and a string on the bottom. Now, the biggest thing about this is, again, we know we're a little bit off square. We know that we're not on perfectly level ground. So what I do is when I go to make my first measurement, we decided that, this sidewall here, the best measurement, we went off the highest point and took our measurement first. And what it ends up being is the same measurement on all 4 ground stakes. So if you do 36 inches on this one, it needs to be 36 inches on all 4 corners. And the purpose in doing that is so that when you run your string down the length of the house, if your ground has some rise and fall to it, or if it's just on a steady slope, that's gonna give you a consistent drop in your ground stakes with your slope. So again, we're gonna put the levels away and worry more about the measuring tape on this one. In doing that, top and bottom on the ground stake, when you tie a string at the top and you tie a string down there at the bottom, when you go to set the rest of your ground stakes on this run, as far as going plumb with the ground, we do wanna get our levels out for that. We do wanna make sure left to right, north and south that we're doing good there. Is if I've got those 2 strings and I take my tubing and just let it hang, almost make a plumb bob out of the tubing itself, lay it right down there where it just kisses the string, then I don't have to worry about my back and forth. All I have to worry about is the left to right. So there's you another one there. A string up high and a string down low. And that's gonna make all of your installation process go just a little bit faster, as it's gonna take out one direction that you're gonna have to work that level. So as we move on, the next step you wanna do is go ahead and get your bows put together so that you can get them in the ground stake. Now, if you're working in the middle of a field, if you're working, if you've got a driveway nearby, one thing that we wanna do is so that we keep our bows in a good straight line, our Super Duty here is gonna be 4 individual pieces to make one arch. If we were doing this on just any part of this driveway that we weren't paying attention, then our bows would have a rise and a fall to them. And not only aesthetically would that look just a little bit funky, you also run the risk of not having that arch uniform. If your arch is not uniform, you do lose some of your strength. So we wanna make sure we have a decently level place that's gonna leave a solid arch instead of an arch that looks more like a snake at the end of the day. Once we get those in, 2 tech screws, you can place them about 3 to 4 inches apart. You go top and bottom right there, and that'll have your bows set. The very next step that I would go to would be to hang my sideboards. We got the footboard here, the hip board here on this low side house. And the reason I wanna do that is because not only is that just logically the next thing to go to, it's also going to help increase the strength of the house. So let's say, again, you're trying to throw this thing up in spring, you're trying to get it done before the next thunderstorm. If you've got your bows and your ground stakes, obviously this is not a sailcloth. It's not gonna catch a ton of wind, but it is a structure suspended in the air. We go ahead and get our boards on here, get them tied in with our 2-hole straps and our ground stake corner brackets here. We're gonna tie the structure to itself. And so if you go straight from hanging your bows to going ahead and getting your board material on, then you're gonna go ahead and increase the rigidity of your home, of your greenhouse, and make sure that it's still standing the next day. Maybe you gotta take a 2-day break during a thunderstorm or some high winds, things like that. You don't wanna be up on a ladder. We know our bows are still gonna be standing because things are all tied together. One thing that I would for sure say about this is when you do your 2-hole strap, it's gonna go around your ground stake. You have the 2 flat ears that will mount onto the back side of the board. Every time we like to go in and put a Tek screw, so you have wood screws going into the board, we like to put a Tek screw directly into the banding around the ground stake. It's gonna help secure the board at the top of the ground stake. In our case here, if anyone was to lean on or step on this during the construction process, without that Tek screw, these boards will slide and fall. So you take that over the length of the time of your house being constructed, through every storm, through every situation it may be in, where that's gonna shift and just the slight vibrations in those storms can still work those down. It may take more time for it to get there versus somebody's foot being on it, of course, but that's still something that would potentially cause damage to your house. So absolutely, we wanna put a Tek screw in every band. The next step we went with here was to put our purlin tubing in. Now, on this Super Duty, this is gonna be 3 runs of purlin. So we've got one, again, this is a 4-piece bow, and I'm not sure that we'll be able to show them here, but where the bow material goes together, it leaves a seam. And so what we've done to line these up is we've put our middle one on the center seam, and then the other 2 at about 10 and 2 o'clock, and those run down the greenhouse on the other seams. The reason for putting those there, I like the idea of not only do I have the banding on there, but I've got the tubing. It ties a lot together right at what I would consider to be a weaker point on the bow, where 2 pieces come together. Once you have all of your purlin runs up, one of the things that we like to do here, again, to increase rigidity, to stop any of those vibrations from shifting your tubing down the bow or left, right, either way, we like to go ahead and take 1 Tek screw and drive that directly through the purlin clamp into the bow material. We want to go from the bottom side so that everything that you do puts those screw heads away from the film going over the house. And when you're putting your bow material together, if you go from if it's laying on the ground and your arch is going across and you go straight in, you have your screw heads on the top, then as you pull that film over, those screw heads give a place to rub and tear. So we like to do those on the tubing at 9, 3, or 6 o'clock, so that when we hang the tubing up, all the screw heads are down. Everything about this construction, you want to be mindful as to where you're driving your fasteners, whether that's nuts and bolts, Tek screws, wood screws. You want to keep those things in mind as you're putting this together, so that when you get to that point in the process where you're ready to skin this thing and get to those final steps, that you don't go, oh man, I have this 3/4 of the way covered. I've got my film hanging almost to the ground over here, and now I'm realizing that I've got Tek screws all on the top of the bow on this side, and you got to backtrack and do that all again. We want to make sure that all of our fasteners are facing the inside of the house. When we hang the purlin, to go along with making sure our fasteners are all secured and in a way that's not going to tear our film, I know you've probably seen it. If you haven't, go back and look at some of our installation videos. We discuss it in there as well. These purlin clamps, these cross connectors, they go together with 1 1/4 inch nuts and bolts. Now that does leave a little bit of a threaded tail hanging out the other side there. And so what we want to do is make sure the threaded side of the bolt faces the same direction. On this particular house, you can see we're building between 2 others here. It does make it a little more difficult. We've decided it's going to be best to pull the film from the left side. All of our thread sides of the bolt are facing to the right. That way, as we pull the film over, those threads are all facing away from the same direction the film is going to travel. That's going to help from snags being created as you're pulling the film over and stop us from tearing and damaging our greenhouse before we even have it finished. One thing that we like to do is to go ahead and get the purlin. I like to start with the saw cut end of the tubing, as each tube you're going to receive from our kit is going to be both saw cut and swedged or crimped. And so what I like to do is start with the saw cut end level with the ground stake, with the end of the ground stake here, and we go ahead and we piece them together. We don't want to go ahead and screw them together, but we want to put them together and mark where every ground stake is. That way when we suspend the purlin from the bow material, what we'll end up with is a mark set on that purlin. So when we use our 2-hole straps to secure it to the first bow, then as we go along, we have a spot to go ahead and move our bow left, right, and center it up on that mark. And that's going to allow us to maintain even spacing down the length of the greenhouse. So that being said, in mindfulness of the project at hand, I do want to go ahead and take the time to say we do have instruction booklets that come with every greenhouse kit that are specific to the kit that you purchased as far as the style of house. We also have about 3 videos online. 2 of those cover our Dakota style, the 16-foot wide and the 20-foot wide in that series. And one of those also covers our high sidewall installation. All of the techniques used in those videos, even if it's not your style of house. If you purchased a Quonset that's only gonna have 6-inch ground stakes, or a low sidewall that's only gonna have 3.5 feet, both of these are gonna be a little bit different from the Dakota or the high sidewall, but all the techniques used in those videos can be applied to every greenhouse series that we sell. Once we've got the boards on, once we've got our purlin suspended, our next step we'd wanna move to is gonna be our end wall kit. Again, I wanna point out the string. I rely on this when we do these kits. And again, you may not be able to see it. I'll try to put my shoe behind it and show you a little bit there. I rely on this when we build these kits. It does absolutely speed along the process. You take a few minutes just to tie the string the right way. Tying the string the right way. Make sure that you're on the outside of the ground stake. Make sure when you wrap that around the tubing and pull it to the other side that your string isn't on the inside of the ground stake, as that's actually gonna throw you off by about 1.5 inches and make your film wanna pull inward to the house. So we do wanna be right here. We pull that string to the outside. That way when we drive these ground stakes, we know that our vertical tubing is going to be lined up with the end of the greenhouse. It's not gonna push our film or pull our film inwards. It doesn't matter if you've got an 8-foot roll-up door, 10-foot roll-up door, 6-foot roll-up door, or if you're only gonna put a standard man door entryway, like a 3-foot by 7-foot storm door that you can buy at Lowe's. We're gonna do roll-up doors on this house, so we have gone ahead and placed our ground stakes in the ground here. The best thing to do is take a measuring tape, go the full length of the house, find your center point, or full width of the house, find your center point, and measure half your distance for either side. So with this being an 8-foot door, I came to 16 feet, and I went 4 foot in the left, or 4 foot in the right, and 4 foot on the left, so that my 8-foot door will be framed in when I'm ready to go. Going ahead and laying all the ground stakes out is gonna give you the ability, once you've got your vertical post in, to go ahead and take your cross members. We'll have a 4-foot cross member in between these 2 outside here. That's gonna help support against wind pushing on the end wall kit. But that goes ahead and gives us the ability to just do the end kit all in stages. So we'll start ground stakes, and then we'll do the verticals, secure them all with their tension bands. Leave those tension bands loose. We can hand tighten those nuts, but we don't want to crank them down or put that Tek screw in just yet, as we are going to put a level on here to make sure that we're plumb with the verticals going all the way up. And also that, you know, even if the spacing's right, we don't want our end walls to look like we're slanting across the house. So doing this in stages, we do ground stakes first, then the verticals. Once everything is in, then you can tighten it down, put your Tek screw in to secure it. Once you have your verticals up and in place, we'll take, these are actually just cutoffs from where we did the boards on the sidewall here. And we're gonna end up trimming these. We don't want these boards on the face of the verticals. As with the outside of the house, your boards are all gonna be on the face of the tubing, the very outside face of the tubing. With all of our end walls, we actually wanna cut these boards to fit. So we have a 1¼ inch square tubing for our verticals. These 2x4s will just about fit perfectly in there. Of course, you know, they're gonna have a little bit of an overlay. We want that to be on the inside of the house. So when I take this board and I cut it to fit here, what I wanna do is make sure that the outside face of this board is flush with the outside face of the vertical tubing. Again, this is just going to ensure that we're not pushing or pulling our film in a way that might increase chances for damage. Again, this is not meant to answer every single question, because every job site, as we'll refer to it, every site where this greenhouse is gonna get built will be different. Whether you're driving into hard-packed red clay like we've got around here, or if you're driving into topsoil, you know, if you're driving into a real rich, loose soil, you may wanna consider concreting your ground stakes in. Extra bits, extra screws, anything you can think of, especially if you're working in a pasture or field, that if you drop it and you never think you're gonna see it again, make sure you have a few extra pieces of hardware. Guys, I wanna thank you for stopping by today and watching this video. Please remember to like, subscribe. If you have particular questions about your greenhouse kit, drop them in the comments down there. We'll do our very best to reply to the comments. If we get enough questions asked, maybe we do another video and turn it into a Q&A session. You guys just let us know. And again, just thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you.